your host, Stephen Leslie, and welcome to This Day in Church History. The Religious Society of Friends, or the Quakers as they are more popularly known, was a religious group formed in the mid-17th century in England and immigrated to North America in the same era. The Quakers would take their stand on June 4, 1756, against a war that would result in the violent deaths of thousands. The unifying belief among all friends is the doctrine of a priesthood of all believers. They base this belief on 1 Corinthians 4 and verse 1, which states, "No one should regard us as anything else than ministers of Christ and dispensers of the mysteries of God." Quakers believe they can have a direct relationship with Jesus without an ordained clergy. Friends, as they call themselves, also have revulsion for violence and war. As legislators, they could not make themselves appropriate funds to raise militia for self-defense. The beginning years of the French and Indian War brought a storm of violence on the Pennsylvania frontier. This unrest called for an armed resistance that the dominant pacifist Quakers in the Pennsylvania Assembly refused to fund. Responding to pleas from the English branch of their church, the Quakers resigned from the Assembly. They quit rather than fund a war they did not believe in. In colonial America, this war was a French and Indian War. The French controlled Canada and had designs on the area that is now the Midwestern United States. They had already established trading posts at Vincennes, Cahokia, St. Louis, and other places. They wanted to discourage the English colonies from westward expansion, especially Pennsylvania. They acted to prevent the English from buying more of the Delaware land. They convinced the Delaware tribe in western Pennsylvania to attack the settlements. These attacks became ferocious, with the natives killing, burning, and raping at will. The non-Quaker portion of the population, which was large, called for funds to raise a militia in self-defense. The Quakers in the Assembly adamantly refused to do this. Now, the level of violence caught the Quakers by surprise. Shocked and dismayed, they tried to settle the tribe down with friendly overtures. They formed a friendly association for regaining and preserving peace with the Indians by a Pacific Measures Committee. They traded guns and other supplies to them and made efforts to make sure that the natives got their prices. The Delaware in turn used the guns to make further attacks. The Quakers' conciliatory efforts failed. The news about the massacres reached England and created a furor. Parliament began to exert pressure on the Assembly. Ben Franklin, a prominent Quaker, argued that non-pacifism in government. The Philadelphia Quakers held firm until the Friends in London appealed to them to stop them from government. The Society of Friends was taking the blame for the violence, hurting its stature. Finally, on June 4, 1756, 6 leading Quakers resigned from the Assembly. They had reached the climax of Quaker political power in the colonies. From this point, their influence on government would decline. The first Lord Candidate of New Haven went up in the fall of 1637. A few men wintered on the bay that year, and in the spring more arrived. Among them was the Reverend John Davenport. Strong religious overtones marked the formation of the colony, as the town called itself. Davenport helped form the religious consensus. For example, his first Sabbath day in New Haven, he preached to the little company under one of the many elms which would give the city its name, City of Elms. Having paid the Indians for land, the settlers sought to establish a colony. Scripture would rule them, they decided. They agreed to meditate and pray for God's illumination on the best way to organize and govern themselves. In 1639, they came to consensus. Again, Davenport played an important role, and on this day, June 4, 1649, the men of New Haven assembled in a barn where he preached and prayed earnestly and proposed 4 fundamental articles for the governance of the colony. His first 4 articles were simple. Scripture contains a perfect rule for government by men in commonwealth, church, and family. They were to be guided by Scripture. They would create a church as soon as God fitted them for it. They would establish a civil order to implement these articles and ensure prosperity for themselves and their descendants. The organization New Haven created was theocratic. 12 members were chosen to rule the colony, and 7 of them also to serve as the 7 pillars of the church, which they organized with the help of 9 assistants. They also elected a magistrate and imposed wage and price controls. This was one of the first autonomous governments by English colonists in the New World. The inhabitants of New Haven swore allegiance only to their own civil government and not to king or parliament. After 23 peaceful years, they were compelled in 1662 to unite with Connecticut. John Davenport fought this merger fiercely, fearing that Christians' interests would be miserably lost in unification. Before coming to the New World, Davenport had distinguished himself as a pastor in England. Because of his Puritan leanings, his election to the vicarage of St. Stephen's in London was resisted by other ecclesiastics. He was allowed to occupy the post only after denying he was a Puritan. He proved to be bold and a faithful pastor, remaining at his post even during the Great Plague of 1625. If not a Puritan at the time, he was elected to St. Stephen's. Davenport soon became closely linked with them. When Archbishop Laud took power in England, Davenport fled to Holland. Eventually he migrated to New England and became the luminary of New Haven. Men of Davenport's caliber played leading roles in the young American colonies, giving them a strongly Christian tone at their birth. How long pastor's prayer is this morning, thought Elvina. Sitting in the choir loft, her mind turned to our need for salvation and the price Jesus paid for it. Words began to form themselves. She had to get them down, but she had no paper. Well, that wasn't quite true. Scribbling on the flyleaf of her hymn book, she wrote, "I hear the Savior say, and thy strength indeed is small. Child of weakness, watch and pray. Find in me thine all in all. Jesus paid it all to him I owe. Sin had left a crimson stain, he washed it white as snow." Not bad at all. After service, she handed the words to her pastor. Did his face crease into a little smile at this evidence of her naughty behavior? We may never know, but we do know that an extraordinary coincidence took place that day at the Monument Street Methodist Church of Baltimore. Organist John Grape had recently written a new tune and given it to the pastor. The pastor saw that the tune and the poem fit together extremely well, so he united them. In that way, one of the most beloved hymns of the church came into being. For nothing good have I, but by thy grace to claim. I'll wash my garments white in the blood of Calvary's Lamb. And now complete in him my robe, his righteousness. Close sheltered neath his side, I am divinely blessed. Elvina was 45 at that time. Born on this day, June 4th, 1820, she was married first to Richard Hall, and then after his death to a Methodist minister, Thomas Mars. She died in 1899. Again, as always, I'm your host, Stephen Leslie, and thank you for watching This Day in Church History.